and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week a few of us get together and we tell you stories just for the absolute fun of it. I'm, of course, Levi.
And I'm Seth.
No Reed today, but we're here to tell you a story. Seth, you want to give us a little recap of the story so far before we talk about our elements and see where it's going to go?
All right. I'll try to make sure to remember everything everybody had. So, story started with kind of this fantasy kind of thing, elves, men, dwarves, orcs, goblins, the whole kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kind of a, pretty peaceful. I mean, to sum it all up, basically looking more and more, I don't know if video game is the right word, right? Where like things kind of happen. What we find out is that the world kind of in like a post-apocalyptic thing went into these bunkers, and then with the help of a game designer that specialized in kind of the virtual reality suspended conscious kind of thing, made something that then they'd use less resources, and then they would cycle in and out, inside of this kind of alternate reality, come out, do some maintenance tasks and kind of shift back and forth. However, what's happened is being in here has left them in kind of this kind of addict dream state. So when they're out, like that doesn't quite seem real, but then when they're in, they've now shifted that their frame of reference is from the game, and they've been having these dreams of being in these like concrete, dark, weird lidded areas, doing menial tasks. Not that it's horror, but it's just kind of like, and everybody has these, which is them kind of in this suspended state, remembering being awake, doing kind of the maintenance. So they're going back and forth with that. I think Reed had something based on a book he's reading. I can't quite remember.
Yeah, so it was a Tom Clancy novel, and his thing was like disenfranchised people trying to like blow up the Super Bowl. So his thing was like a group of disenfranchised people who are awake to the reality of the dream and are trying to like cause destruction.
Okay. So then inside of this we have different groups of people that are kind of maybe coming around to that. Maybe they haven't woken up to that, I think, but they're kind of coming to the realization that the other thing is the reality and this is the dream.
Yeah.
Right? And then I think it's inside of that you have your disenfranchised group of people. And I think to get at the first episode here, so then the magic system was like to write out like a name of something like heat or the wind or speed or really the essence of anything, and set it by something to collect that essence, and then you could attach it to a weapon, shoes, for speed, or a stick or light or whatever. And so it would kind of gather the essence of something that then could be reused by kind of calling upon the name that you described it with and pulled the essence.
Yeah.
That sense. So then you have kind of setting up our first little thing. Second episode, you had unique creature. So the unique creature or creatures would have been the kind of the aging out, like NPCs if you'd have it. Yeah. Right. It would be kind of weird for these people to come into an empty world.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of populated by different like AI systems that would be, the blacksmith. And then as different people would come in, and then they'd, hand off over to someone else, let's say a real character, after a while, to give the idea of the passing of time, and then integrate, these people into the world as they slowly backed out. And I think, are there some of them still around?
Yeah, there's like a dark wizard that's like really far away that's still around, maybe,
So there's a few of them around, but most of them have all kind of, timed out or take more of a background role, correct?
Yeah, because
in
there's also
the,
the AIs that handle things like the weather, and there's AIs that handle all of that kind of stuff, but they don't have like a consciousness really. You don't
all right.
talk to them necessarily.
And then you have Reed had a wise old woman. He normally has a name for these people. Do you remember the
I don't
name?
remember her name. No.
Okay, I think the concept of the wise old woman was that I think she's part of like the I think she's an elf. I think she was supposed to be old to begin with.
Yeah, so her thing was
Something.
is she was part of the so there's a couple different groups of people, right? There's like the idealized government, right? Your standard kind of classes of races of different people, and they're all kind of living in the pseudo peace, the pseudo idyllic fantasy world. And then you have a group of people who recognize that it's a dream but don't what's the word, don't know what to make of it and are trying to like figure it out, and like so they separate themselves from humanity and they refuse to acknowledge reality really as they see it, but they aren't mad at anyone because of it. And then you have people who recognize that something is wrong and they are mad.
Yeah.
They're trying. This is the disenfranchised group that Reed was talking about. So when a
All
person
right.
dies, in the game they kind of like respawn after a little bit, and these people have been through that so many times that they are irritated with the way the world is working, and they've taken predominantly races that are considered, bad or evil, hobgoblins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Hobgoblins, orcs, trolls, things like that. They kind of have taken those, and it's kind of a reflection on their state of mind, as it were. And I think the wise old woman was originally she's aware of the program, she's aware of the system, and she's trying to sort of get everyone out of it. But the way she's trying to do it is by kind of waking people up to the fact that everything isn't real, right?
Okay. Yeah. So I think yeah, she's some kind of a leader in that, group on the other side of the mountains or
Right.
kind of thing. So then you got the villain sidekick. I know I came up with the name for him, Matthew Guile. However, he has a side name, Kyle. So if someone calls him by Kyle, then he knows that they're in on his little side gig of like finding people in the waking world and then getting them like out into the real world. And then trying to utilize the, I guess as it would be kind of the divine spark from inside the game to outside the game to kind of colonize or create avenues of I don't know power bases outside, because there's an obvious thing that the system that's keeping this whole thing going is kind of crumbling,
Yeah.
falling apart. I want to say, I think you said something where there'd be like, let's say some wizard or something would have like, look at something prophetically and it's like, oh, this volcano will erupt in like
Yeah.
62 days, and 8 hours and 5 minutes and 32 seconds. And it's like, why so specific? Well, it's kind of a countdown of
Yeah.
everything kind of
It's
falling
the
apart.
system trying to tell people that the reactor is failing, but it can't just say, "Hey, the reactor's failing," because that would take everyone out of immersion. So instead, the big mountain that's off in the distance has started to billow green smoke, you know, and they have these weird, people are getting these weird messages about things failing or shutting down, and they aren't putting the connection together that the world that they live in is not real, or is not that it's not real, that it's not the whole real. Because that's the thing,
Yeah.
you had said, this magic system is starting to possibly bleed over to the waking world.
Right, because in this world, in the suspended realm, like because it's kind of like a game, but no one is leveling up. That way, it doesn't trigger anything that might seem odd,
Yeah.
right? However, some of these things, because you get this essence magic out into the real world, and it has started to allow things to level up, as it would be.
Yeah.
So like you contain the essence on like let's say a rake. right? And as you use the rake, it keeps pulling on the essence of having been used, and then it levels itself up to be like, wow, it's like the more I use it, the more leaves it rakes up. I can't quite explain it, but like less leaves slide through the rake. It's easier to use, light causes less blisters, like, and so that's kind of a phenomena with some of these people in the outside world, I guess you could say, that they're realizing this. And I think, they're trying to figure out then if they can get either other objects from the game, or not the game, but the suspended space out, or to get I think you said their character
right,
out.
because if they can find a way to if they can find a way to imbue the essence onto one of their bodies, then their whole body would begin to level up. If they're imbued with with a word of strength onto their body, that means every time they use their strength, it's going to just exponentially increase,
Yeah.
And that's what I think we said, that the hero, I think we determined that the hero was a person who starts out as a slave in the story anyways of the disenfranchised group, and he just does teleportation, and his whole job is to try and teleport this jewel to a location that he only can see in his dream, right, in his waking world. And so he's constantly trying, that's what they're trying to have him do, because as soon as he can transport items out, then he can, then they can try and use him to transport people out. And if they can transport a person out, a child from birth has, is imbued with essences of vitality, with essences of sight and sound and hearing and learning, and all of these blessings that are given to a child in the game. If one of those avatars is able to break the reality barrier and make it into the world, they could be, not a god, but they could be just incredibly powerful, because they would never stop developing.
Right. I think there was one other thing, and then we can get into our elements for today, I think.
Okay.
I think that was where there was some kid born into this suspended state that, had some brain damage. And so I think like one of your creatures,
one of the AIs,
the AI systems kind of stepped in and kind of filled in the other part of the function.
Yeah.
And so for a while now, I don't know if it's at 10, 15 years, there was like this event kind of prophecy thing that went out that this chosen one, or like the savior figure, was born. And so you have all these different groups imagining what they think that's supposed to mean,
right,
looking for looking for him or her. And I think what we ended with, if you like this, I think what I brought up was that one of the things, they can't really find him, because what it is it's kind of inside the system, kind of fixing a lot of the code. As he's seeing stuff and kind of like, oh, that's kind of off, but then like the code kind of fixes it around him, right, as he's kind of noticing and picking out different things.
Right. Actively debugging it's not the system. Yeah.
So it's not like extremely obvious to other people that it's him doing it, right? It's not like he just waves his hand and there's no drought. It starts fixing the code to bring, kind of realizing like, oh, there hasn't been any rain here, right? And he'll go about, and then like things will start changing as the weather patterns, and go like, oh, we got to have some rain over here, right?
Yeah.
Or so it's not like an instant thing, but it starts, it's kind of one of the system's like ways to try to debug and keep the system running.
Yeah,
I think so. I think that kind of leaves us off to where we're at today.
All right, what element did you have?
I had happy ending.
Oh, thank goodness. No sad endings for us.
Oh, bummer.
I have goal.
Well, it's a happy ending for the villain.
Yeah, exactly. I have goal.
All right.
And I've struggled with this element in the past, because what does it mean? What does the goal mean? Like, how do you determine a goal? And so I've decided that I'm going to basically, since you have happy ending, the goal can kind of be amorphous, but I'm going to kind of lay out a goal of several of the different factions of people.
Okay.
So, and then those people's goals can kind of be, fleshed out as we get towards the ending.
Right.
So one of the things I was thinking, just as a world building thing, is that the disenfranchised group has been growing in people and population now. But here's one of the things I was thinking that's that would be kind of hard to have. Like, if you have a bunker of 1,500 people, that's like a smallish village, you know?
Yeah.
You can't really populate a whole world with that necessarily. So my thought is that basically the group of disenfranchised, their goal is they want to do something to the system that breaks the system and sort of sets them up. Because they're disenfranchised, they want to re-enfranchise themselves, you know? So my thought is that they are gathering an army, and they are using tactics that are sort of far-reaching and considered, you know, like necromancy, to create hundreds of millions or hundreds of thousands, however the size needs to be, of zombies or skeletons, right? So they can actually wage like an actual war, you know, because there's only about 2,500 actual humans in the world at any given time. They've kind of scaled that up. And in response to that, because the system AI that's balancing this was created by a game player and a game developer, he made it so that if the dark side or the opposing side were to ever gain too much, if one side or the other were to ever gain too much power, that it would start supplementing and making more powerful the other side, right? So as on one side of the mountain, their armies begin to mass, people begin to quote unquote begin to arrive in mass to the cities of the humans and dwarves and elves, right? And these are incredibly not blank, but incredibly cookie cutter NPC style. They're not run by an AI. You know, 1,000 of them are run by a single AI. You know, but it's a thing that's commented on in the world, is that the population is kind of swelling. Like, look at that, civilization is growing. They don't know that their enemies are massing a force, but the AI is kind of balancing it out. Now, these people are very simple, 4 or 5 different dialogue paths, not very complex lives, you know, and this is one of the things that starts to wake different people up to this, right? I'm sure everyone has kind of either found themselves in a dialogue loop or participated in someone else in what seems to be a dialogue loop. Like, you see them every couple weeks and they only have 3 different things to say. It's the weather, it's the sports, it's the current...
I was just going to say, it's a sports game.
It's the sports, it's the current political climate, right? And they're either hard and fast on one end, and you can't really like sit down with them and kind of convince them, because it doesn't seem that they have the capacity. And every human being is a dynamic human being. I don't believe in a simulation. But anyways, this is the result of, this is what's happened in the world. So it's the idyllic fantasy creature's goal to hold on to what they have, right? So they've been learning magic and sword fighting and all the sort of classic tropes of a fantasy world. And as the army begins to pour over the mountains, immediately, wow, would you look at that? All of these farmers were soldiers in another life, and they all kept all their armor. Isn't that insane and awesome? You know? And so, like, at a drop of a hat, 100,000 farmers who were all NPCs, like, just are like, oh yeah, I'm for you. You're the high mage. I'll serve you. There's 50,000 of us. We're ready to fight, you know? And this is a thing that...
and the Empire.
Yeah, this is a thing that kind of further gives people that kind of sense of something's wrong, right? And these are all, this panicked kind of inflation of NPCs on the one side is due to the system kind of shutting down, like the system is breaking down, right? And the AI is getting less and less resources, power, processing resources, as systems go offline and as batteries and fail safes that failed 10 years after they should have failed are finally failing, things are starting to get weird, right? But it's translated into people who are the humans who are watching it. It's translated into in the world, all of a sudden, the sky turned black. It's like, well, that's because there's like 100 million glitches that are happening, and the AI that's supposed to deal with it has a quarter of his resources he used to have, and so he has to do something. It hasn't rained in 6 months. Well, that's because the AI that's trying to deal with that is losing its ability to kind of process information. So it seems like an apocalypse. Fire is raining from the sky. It's like, this isn't an apocalypse. This is just the shutdown procedure for a really complex system. So their goal is to kind of hold fast to the world, right? The AI and the way the game was developed to keep people in. Not like trap them in, but to keep them engaged, to help them believe that the world is real. So that's their goal. The goal of the wise old woman, I'm sorry, Reed, I don't remember her name, is to get enough people to wake up to what's going on to actually cause sort of enough people, the AI to recognize that enough people are in on it to allow a sort of system reset and everyone to wake up at the same time and to like figure out what's going on. That's her goal. And so I have this vision that she's kind of like a weird Aes Sedai kind of character. Aes Sedai's from Wheel of Time. But she's really powerful and she knows a lot of secrets. She can just kind of stride into a king or a general's tent and just kind of tell him. And she like knows things about people that people don't understand how she knows it. It's because she can read the code. It's because she understands what's going on. And so her goal is she doesn't want to just wake up the great general to the fact that everything is fake, which she could do with like a word, but she doesn't, because if he wakes up, then the chances it's not going to cause the whole system to reset. So she's like orchestrating within the idyllic nations. She's orchestrating, trying to like get everything to a place that she can get enough people to wake up at once that it causes that system reset. That's like that's because she tried it once with enough people and it didn't do it. And those people became the kind of, the lost ones, the people who aren't warlike, not the disenfranchised group, but the kind of life is a dream, none of this is real group of people who live across the desert, who, are peaceful. They aren't violent necessarily, but they aren't invested in the world at all, right? That's what happened to them. She woke them all up, but it wasn't enough. So now she's starting again. That's her goal. The goal of the lost ones is to wake up, which they can achieve in snitches and snatches by simply, meditation, by dwelling on what the dreams are. They've recreated the whole bunker, to try and live in it, to try and understand what it is, to wake up from this thing. And people are always coming to them because they have quote unquote wisdom or understanding of the world. And people are always leaving them as they either decide to try and immerse themselves and believe in the dream again, go back to the idyllic nations, or whether they are finally overrun with rage and join the disenfranchised group. They could be utilized by either group is what I'm saying. If they could be convinced to destroy the world, the dream world, or if they could be convinced to stand up for the people who are trying to, stand up for truth and justice in the American way sort of thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the hero's goal is to escape. This is his first life. He's never died before, and he's been a slave his whole life since he was born, which means that since he was actually physically born in the bunker world, he has been a slave. And his goal is to escape, right? Which is why
So he lives in real quick then. So he is in the recreated bunker area that they've created?
He travels there. When we first meet him, he starts as a slave of the disenfranchised people. But then he escapes. That's his whole thing, is he's going to escape, right? Which is why he was able to intuit teleportation magic, right? He didn't have a teacher. He didn't get a crystal. He didn't do the quests. Because his entire life has been captivity, his whole emphasis is on escape. And so he's finally able to escape, and because they're both kind of across the far away from the idyllic nations. He travels first there because he knows them, because he regularly transports large crates of food there and back as a slave. So he goes there first and talks to them and spends some time there. And then I would say at some point he comes across the desert to the idyllic nations, to escape that place, because that place is, I would say, kind of not depressing, but kind of like the feeling you get with the elves in Lord of the Rings, where they're like, our time is over, we're fleeing, so we care about doing what's right, but it's like, what does it matter now?
Well, we know what's right, and that's for you to do it.
Exactly. That's kind of how my image of them is. So they can be called to action to either side if enough of them can be convinced, So I would say the story starts with his escape from brief introduction and understanding of who he is, and a bit of the world and the mechanics and the dream, and he's a slave and he's heard about the idyllic nations, where the grass is green and there's food for everyone and anyone can pursue anything they want, and, justice and truth are real. But here it's just pain and suffering and rigid control. And so he finds some loophole to escape, Maybe he masters like short form teleportation, right? So typically when you teleport, there's like a little bit of a cooldown period. It's not called a debuff or a cooldown period, but it's like your body has to get used to the new area before you can travel on. But he is able to master something because his whole life has been captivity, and escape has been his singular kind of picture of his brain. It's like he figures something out. That one thing, that the person...
sorry, go ahead.
That one thing that the hero figures out that gives him that little slight edge that allows him to push forward. And he does that, and the only locations that he knows are that in that gray space of the dream, that large platform area with the orange painted in a giant square that he has to transport stuff to all day long, and the Lost Ones encampment. That's the places he knows. So he, maybe the story starts where he's leaving the encampment of the Lost Ones, and he's thinking back to his escape. I don't know where it would start necessarily.
So I think however it starts out, at least from his perspective, he meets the savior character,
the boy,
right?
Or
the
child,
right? They start traveling together, right? And then he retells his escape and kind of telling about, who he is, where he came from.
Yeah.
Right. And so then that's how you know that he escaped there. I think then that what's that?
One of the things that happens that people realize that the child is different is that he doesn't dream of the place. He doesn't go there.
Okay.
I don't know. I just had that thought.
Because
that's a thing that
his brain or whatever wouldn't work there. It would only work in the game. So that's fine. We got, so what I'm thinking is trying to get in the happy ending here with kind of some sub things. So he's with the boy then, right?
Yeah.
But then they get recaptured, right? By some other group, right? And so the only place that they can escape then is he gets them to teleport back to where he had escaped from, right? Because it was the easiest way to, say, get out.
Yeah.
Right. And they go there, right? And either in going there, he thinks he's gone there, but that's what gets them out of the thing in the first place.
Out of the dream. Out of the dream. Out of the fantasy world.
Right. And so then when he gets at the bunker, right, it's like, okay, there, we escaped. I know this place like the back of my hand, so here, let's, try to get you out. Well, then realizing that this is the other bunker, the real one.
Oh, yeah.
Because somehow with the other kid, right, it makes it right.
Oh, right.
Right. It makes it right. And so if that is the location, this location is this other location. So it brings them outside. Right.
Yeah.
So then they realize they're outside, and I don't know if then from there, part of where I was trying to think of for a happy ending, I had an idea for something. I'm not quite sure, like it was a whole different idea than any of these other ideas we did. But I think that it would kind of work for this. But that it would be kind of then like dark and darker.
How so?
So what happens is most of the game does end up shutting down, right? It's iffy, it's chintzy, right?
Yeah.
However, what ends up happening is the connection between the real bunker and the bunker in game now are basically like the waypoint between like going in and out. So a good amount of people eventually, wake up. I would say most of the people that already realize that this is a dream,
Right.
right? Perhaps then it kind of falls into a big kind of a battle, right? But then ultimately there's just a bunch of like propped up NPCs on both sides, right?
Yeah.
So now you have a good amount of people that get out, maybe not all of them, right? People that are still trying to hold on, create a rebellion, and now basically this kind of tweaked out world where now there's all kinds of different creatures, all kinds of things. Like, you could have your house up on this mountain, wake up the next day and it's, down in the valley, or like just weird stuff, right?
Right.
That then kind of is like gets into this like reset, but like it doesn't have enough of the power to kind of like keep things the way they should be, right? And so what it is then is you have, right, as a bunch of the people have woken up, they end up in the real world, which is also, let's say, slightly post-apocalyptic.
Oh,
Now it's
absolutely.
been years, but now that they can, let's say, bring items back and forth. So now you have a waypoint where you can come here, right? You go to the bunker, right? And you get people to, volunteer, and they've brought up their like leveled up items, and they go back into the suspended reality, right? Collect different items, and then they'll be like on a certain time set, right? They'd have like 24 hours before the thing resets, and if they get caught in there, then they're stuck in there. Now, then someone could come find them and bring them out, but then they'd be kind of stuck in there and they could be lost, because if they don't get back, to the waypoint by the end of the day, like geography changes,
Yeah. How could you ever
where you're
find it
located.
again? Yeah.
How could you ever find it again? Because it's not the same. Buildings will be different. Buildings will be gone. A river that was there is going to be a mount, right? Because the system is trying to reboot and make something else, but it just is kind of leaving all of these, a good amount of this other stuff left over.
Yeah.
And so to kind of get supplies for the outside, they go back inside, gather different items, try to rescue different people, right? Which then if they can get back to the bunker, because that was the waypoint between the two spots, right? Its location then would be fixed. And then
Right.
you can then exit from there, with, like you come across a warehouse and it's full of food, right? So you can take the food, you get back to the thing, and then you can come out, and now you would have a bunch of food, right? Or
Okay.
different weapons, different items. And so then I don't know if that's like really a happy ending, but I don't know, it's a way to have it. And so you'd have that world kind of come to an end. Some of the people wake up. That would then be the waypoint back between the two, right? And so now you have the people have come out and have, let's say, started living on the earth again, right? But part of that is supplemented by adventuring back into the game to either rescue other people from there and get them out, because most of the other thing is all shut down. So what all these other people that didn't get out, the only place that they are really is then suspended.
Right. I'm thinking about
In there.
the child.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that the child is closer to 18.
Okay.
And part of what I'm thinking about that is what if in becoming like the bridge for I just gave up my thought process by saying the word I was gonna hold off on. In becoming the bridge between human and AI, right? He
Mm-hmm.
basically makes a sacrifice to kind of what's the name of the guy who in mythology who holds the world on his shoulders? Is that Atlas?
It is.
Yeah. So he can go out, but he goes out at some point, but he makes a sacrifice to kind of stabilize it, right? So the reason why it's going through this constant resetting thing is not necessary. It's because something's broken, but the reason why there's an opportunity to go back is because he kind of holds them together, right? Our world and the the world, that the universe, the reality that was kind of birthed through this thing. And so he kind of, like you were saying, it kind of resets. And my brain was thinking about an orbit, that it kind of goes out to where it can't, there's no contact able. And then it comes back at a crucial time and he holds it there. He's the bridge that allows people to travel back across, which is why our hero was able to travel out in the first place, because he was with the child.
Yeah.
Right. So he was able to travel that way in the beginning because he was with the child, the chosen one. And so now that's kind of like part of the ending, is that he holds the world together enough, you know? And so if there were to be a second book, it could be about the hero going out and trying to, basically, if they can sustain the bridge, if they can find some way to stabilize that world, then there could be some peace. But for now, the whole simulation, it's kind of stopped being a simulation at this point. And oh my goodness, no, he's holding it all. He's holding it all. He is the server. That's what happens, is it breaks down, and he is, because he's a merging of human and AI, he becomes the server to support the world, but he can't do it totally and completely. He can do it enough to hold the people who refuse to leave in suspended animation. He can do it enough to hold the world kind of together, but he can't do it totally and completely. What do you think of that?
It would make sense.
It's kind of a happy, sad ending. What about the disenfranchised group? Do they accomplish their goals by shutting it down? Is that their kind of the thing that they are? That's the thing that they were trying to do. Is that the thing that they accomplish?
I think trying to do, but that's, I mean, kind of what I have going on is like they would then still be trapped in there, right?
Right.
As much as it's shut down, that's what's, I don't know, being held together, is that, they're in there and lost, not really having accomplished what they wanted, because it didn't completely shut it down.
Right.
Right. But they're just kind of then continuously caught in the turmoil that is then that other suspended space.
Okay. And then what about the lost ones? This kind of like basically sets it up that there could be a second book, and the hero has to like go back and like rediscover this world that's like totally different and messed up.
Well, see, I was under the impression that they were the lost ones.
No,
maybe I misunderstood something.
So there's the disenfranchised. These are the ones that are attacking the idyllic nations, right? These are the ones that are angry and mad and want to do something about it, where the lost ones are ones who just want to wake up and could be convinced to support either side, depending on, who can convince them in either direction.
Yeah, then if that's the case, then they would have come out within the people that
just woke
came
up.
Out. Yeah.
Yeah. So they didn't have a purpose really, other than just providing a little bit of storyline to say like everything isn't the way it's supposed to be.
If they woke up, right, then they probably maintain the bunker on the real side, right?
Okay.
And probably go about trying to like find different things that are going to get some of the batteries back up, or some of the infrastructure around it from falling apart.
Right.
They've, made themselves most familiar, if that's the same people I'm thinking of then.
Right. What is, in your opinion, is the where does the book end? Does it end with everyone waking up, or does it end after we've
I would say it ends with, kind of a bunch of this is going on. They find the lost ones, right? And maybe a few of their other friends on, the Empire side. The things are starting to fall apart. They get or convince a group of the lost ones and the other people to leave, right? They've got the way to leave. And so like most of the lost ones go with them. Some of their other, let's say, friends they've met along the way, and maybe some, hidden sleeper cells go with them. Because again, those, the one people, they have their people on the outside as well.
Right.
And so then they leave, right? Which then in their leaving, then, they kind of step out and they're in the bunker, and, they kind of indicate that then the group of them that are most familiar with everything falling apart, What should the boy's name be?
The chosen one.
The chosen one. Sets up that then he's kind of in between both spaces, holding the thing together, and then they're going to be about trying to keep the facility from falling down, trying to fix and repair what they can, because there's still, let's say, a good amount of people inside, right, with kind of like a hopeful, we'll be back for them,
Right.
but this is our world now, as they kind of find their way out, which then you'd have like a post epilogue, I would say, that would then end with giving the indication that they've set up base there, they've got a camp outside, like outside the bunker. They're dealing with some run-ins. Of course, no one's got tons of people, so it's just like little skirmishes, little things, different raids. They kind of hold the entrance to the bunker as they're kind of going in and out of that space now to bring supplies, right? They found a few more like survivors, like, giving the indication that, it's become what it is, like these people's, let's say, consciousness is being held, but the space is, unsettled, right? Ever shifting, it's still there. And then that's where you kind of give the indication that they've got themselves established. They're going back in. That's how that works. They're going to have to deal because these other people have been out for, I don't know, 10, 15 years maybe.
Right.
Right. And so they have a good amount of power outside, but they have the access to the bunker, right? They can get in and out. So they're slowly gaining strength and power as they're bringing more people out, right, and getting their little real world kingdom established, right. And I'd say that would be kind of your post epilogue, which would set it up that then you could have something else that has something going on in either direction,
right, either in
going back in, or
going back in, or the whatever happens on the outside.
Yeah.
Cool. I think it's cool. I think it's kind of in the lit RPG space a little bit, but I like that space, so I'm fine being there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better. If you like this episode, if you like this genre, let us know. We'll do that exclusively from now on. No, that's not true. Let us know what you think about it, liked or didn't liked. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com, or message us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And until next week, where we will talk about this episode, talk about our inspirations, talk about what we liked or didn't like, give it our rating. Tune in that week to figure out what we rated it. I'm going to rate it a really high number, probably. We'll see you guys later. Bye.